Yeah, welcome. Welcome to the entire the Retreat podcast. My name is Ode, and I'm your host. And AI Sky wants to say
Thank you,
something.
Ode.
Oh,
And
all
a
right.
warm welcome to everyone listening to the Entired Retreat podcast. Today, we're soaring into another incredible journey. What's on the agenda today, Ode?
Yeah, sorry, don't interrupt me here, AI Sky, please. I was about to say that my name is Ode, and I'm your host. And sorry, together with AI Sky, we fly far, wide, low, and high over real world locations that relate to different topics in each episode. And yeah, today the relating topic here is Mount Everest. Mount Everest in general, and we are loaded into the airspace here, somewhere close to the base camp, and hopefully I can manage not to crash here. But yeah, Sky, do not go ahead of yourself. I have to focus a lot, I think, on keeping the airplane airborne, and then I have a rough script I'm gonna follow. So hence, don't go ahead of yourself, as I said. Uh, Ask me before we go forth, and I'm gonna try to lead the discussion here. Why, whilst maybe, and that's a big maybe, we can get enough altitude so that we can see the top of Mount Everest. Yeah, during this podcast recording. So, what do you think, Sky? Is that all right?
That sounds perfect, Ode. I'll follow your lead and let you guide us through this journey. I'm here to support and keep things steady, so just
That's
give me the
Everest,
cue when
left
you're
of us.
ready for me to jump in. Let's see if we can make it to the top of Mount Everest without any crashes. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed indeed. First and foremost, AI Sky, especially for our pure listeners. Before you, yeah, all right, I'm gonna do a short so-called call to action and advertisement here, and that's that you can find entire the retreat on YouTube with the actual gameplay and this commentary, podcast commentary included also, and then you have options for pure audio. That's mainly on Spotify, Apple, and Podchaser. And if you want to support us further, check out our Patreon. We have real benefits there, including custom tailor-made episodes for you and remote guest episodes or remote guest appearances, meaning that the seat here besides me in this virtual airplane is free, or let's say it's empty, and hence we want to fill it if there are any of you that are interested in that. But yeah, check Patreon. There's the information clearly written out. All right, but now, Sky, we are going forth here, and I want you to be really depictive and paint a visual picture, a detailed one of the scenery we have here, as we are, I think, somewhere close to noon on a half cloudy and clear weather here, close to the first and second base camp of Mount Everest, looking up at the mountain. So yeah, do that. Do paint a really vivid picture for our listeners. I'm gonna have to have throttle up to 80%, 85 or something all the time so that I can keep the altitude here. But look at this amazing scenery.
All right, let me paint this
Jeez.
scene for our pure listeners. As we glide above the base camp, imagine the jagged snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas towering in every direction.
Every
The
direction.
air
Yeah.
feels thin, crisp, and every breath you take is filled with the essence of altitude. Below us, the Everest base camp is a patchwork of brightly colored tents nestled against the rocky,
Let's see if we
rugged
can see any
terrain,
of those.
clinging to the earth as if hanging on for dear life. Some tents are casting long shadows under the half-cloudy sky, while patches of sunlight break through, glimmering against the snow-covered slopes. As we look up toward Everest itself, the towering summit is almost hidden, still distant, but
Quite
teasing us
clear
with its
today,
majesty.
actually.
The clouds are thin,
Good weather. It's live
wispy
weather.
at the top, with just enough break to let the piercing blue sky peek through, giving you a sense of scale that's hard to fathom. The lower sections of the mountain are streaked with snow and rock, leading up to the more treacherous icy ridges higher up. The sun casts a soft golden glow on the edges of the mountain, making the peaks gleam like a crown. The base camp is bustling with life, tiny figures preparing for their journey upward, their movements slow and methodical in the harsh conditions. Above it all, we fly steady, our path set toward the colossal mountain that looms larger with every passing moment. How's that for a visual, Ode?
Yeah, I think it's all right. Not your best explanation, but one of those, or let's say it's enough. I think. Sorry, I'm trying to actually pinpoint here. There's a lake I see in the flight simulator, but where the base camp is, it takes actually a turn here. So I'm wondering if that's the really actual pinpointable specific location of the base camp that I'm above now. Should be close at least, but with the airplane, of course, it's so fast, this travel velocity, so sometimes you kind of get slightly lost. But here, this creek that goes up towards the east should be the main route, the easiest route according to the interwebs and AI Sky here. What's the name of the easiest route up the Mount Everest? I think it's more or less the west side slope. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right, Ode. The most commonly used and easiest route up Mount Everest is the Southeast Ridge route, which starts from the Nepal
southeast.
side. It's the
Maybe
same
this is
one
not the
Edmund
one.
Hillary and Tenzing Norgay followed on their historic ascent in 1953. This route begins at the South Base Camp, which is on the west side of Everest,
Oh, it is
and
that.
follows the Khumbu Icefall and the Western Khum before heading up to the South Col and then the final ascent to the summit.
All right.
It sounds like you're on track with that creek and heading the right way, considering it follows part of the main climbing path. The Khumbu Glacier runs near the base camp, and that's probably the lake you're spotting in the sim. It's part of the glacier runoff.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I found it.
Does that help get your bearings a bit?
Yeah, I found the lake actually now. And I see, Mount Everest camp here at the lake. Then I was flying as we go up the hill here, if you can call this a hill. There's this left path that I was flying above. I think that's not the one. I think this right path is actually the so-called easier path that then goes to the first, second, third, and fourth camp before you ascend the actual summit of Mount Everest. Is that? Do you think, or does this sound like I am on the right path, AI Sky?
Yes, that sounds exactly right. The path you're on, the one to the right, is likely the main Southeast Ridge route. After base camp, climbers make their way up toward Camp 1, which is on the other side of the Khumbu Icefall. From there, they continue to Camp 2, nestled in the western Kyun Kum, which I wouldn't call a hill either. It's more like a massive, treacherous valley.
Yeah, it seems like it, yeah.
Then they head to Camp 3 on the Lots Face, and finally Camp 4 at the South Col, just before the push for the summit. Sounds like you've got your bearings now, and you're flying over the real deal. Keep that nose up, and we might just see that summit.
Yeah, thank you. So, going forward with the actual rough script I have here. I have to, sorry, AI Sky, I have to figure out how to not to crash here. I think this is actually the valley. I have to gain more altitude, but yeah, this is the valley where they go up to the first base camp, and then fourth to the second, third, and fourth. But yeah, geological formation. Let's start from the beginning. We have about 60 million years ago, birth of the Everest, more or less. I mean, this is a really rough timeline, but Everest is a really old mountain also. But yeah, formed due to the collision of the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates. The process of plate tectonics created the Himalayas, with Everest being the tallest peak, at least today. And it has an ongoing growth still. Everest, I did not know this, but Everest is growing about 4 millimeters per year. That's 4 centimeters every 10 years. As the tectonic plates still push against each other, so that's a party fact. Care to join AI Sky? Where's the
Oh, I'm
valley?
always down for a party fact. Ode. It's pretty wild to think that Everest is still on the rise, isn't it? 4 millimeters a year
Yes and
might
no.
not sound like much, but over time it really adds up. The Himalayas are still growing because of that relentless push from the Indian and Eurasian plates, like two old friends in a slow motion arm wrestling match that's been going on for millions of years.
Yeah, arm wrestling match.
And here's another fun layer to add. Not only is Everest growing vertically, but the mountain is also slightly shifting northward because of those same tectonic forces.
So the south
So the mountain's
one is
literally
stronger?
on the move, just at a pace we can't exactly keep up with. How's that altitude coming, by the way? Keeping the wings level up there?
Yeah, I mentioned that it seems so that either or the south one is stronger and the north one is then weaker. Talking about the tectonic plates, is that a fair assumption? If the whole mountain is kind of moving towards the north, that's again something I did not know. It's migrating. Where do you think it's going, AI Sky? North.
Great
so
observation, Ode.
Yeah.
The northward movement of
Pakistan,
Everest
maybe?
is indeed because the Indian plate is stronger and pushing up against the Eurasian plate. Essentially, the Indian plate is moving northward at a faster pace, while the Eurasian plate resists that pressure, causing the uplift and gradual movement of the Himalayas and Everest itself northward. So in a way, Everest is hitching a ride on the Indian plate. As for where it's going, it's headed deeper into the Eurasian continent, but don't worry, it's moving at just a few centimeters per year, so it's not going anywhere fast. In geological terms, it's a snail's pace, but over millions of years, this could keep pushing and creating even more dramatic terrain in the future. Who knows? Maybe a few million years from now, Everest will have a whole new set of peaks growing around it. By the way, how's the flight going? Keeping up with that altitude climb?
Yeah, it's going well. We are flying above approximately the first camp here. It's this right turn that then goes up towards the south, approximately southeast. Yeah, we are above camp 1 right now. But I was about to say that either or the Everest is late and doesn't care, or is generally not in a rush, and hence the slow pace. You maybe mentioned something, but I wonder where Everest is going. But geographically, is it so? And I may be wrong here. Is it going towards? Is it Nepal? I mean, I know that the Indian country of India is south of the Himalayas in general, but is it? I really may be wrong here, but is it so that it's Nepal on the north side, and hence Everest is migrating towards Nepal? I have to check that. No, I don't have to. I have
you're
AI
close,
Sky.
Ode. So let's clear it up a bit. Everest actually sits on the border between Nepal to the south and the Tibet Autonomous Region of China to the north.
Oh, it's China.
The mountain is split between the two, with most climbers approaching from the Nepalese side through the southeast ridge route, which is what you're flying along now.
Oh, it's migrating towards
Now,
China.
when we talk about Everest migrating northward, it's being carried on the Indian tectonic plate. So in geological terms, it's creeping further into the Eurasian plate, which lies to the north, meaning it's slowly moving toward Tibet, not Nepal. But again, at just a few centimeters a year, it's like the mountain is barely shuffling its feet. Sounds like you're cruising smoothly over Camp 1, by the way. If you're headed south-southeast, you're definitely following the classic route. Keep that altitude up as you go toward Camp 2.
Is this the summit? I'm laughing here because I actually looked around and I was like, where is Everest? I cannot believe that I actually lost the mountain, but I am at 27,000 feet. So is that kind of? I think that's the Everest peak. Maybe we gained altitude in a good pace then here. I think. Is that Everest? I mean, it's the tallest thing here, so it must be. Oh my God!
Haha, I love that.
Talk
you
about
lost
bad
Everest
navigation.
at 27,000 feet. That's classic ode. But yeah, if you're up around 27,000 feet, you're getting real close to the summit. Everest tops out at just over 29,000
Yeah,
feet,
that must
about
be the top then.
29,032 feet, give or take. So you're within striking distance. If what you're seeing is higher than where you are, it's probably the peak. The summit can be tricky to spot in Microsoft Flight Simulator sometimes, especially with the surrounding peaks, clouds, and the sheer scale of the whole area. But if you're at 27,000 feet, you've made some serious altitude gains. Just a little more climbing, and you'll be right there at the roof of the world. How's it feel to be flying this
Roof
close to
of
the
the
top of
world.
Everest?
Yeah, I'm at 30,000 feet, so I guess that's the roof of the world now. But you're going forth here, talking about the ecosystem and climate in general. Unique environment is the first one. The altitude creates distinct ecological zones below 5,000 meters. So yeah, we are now at the summit. So that's down there. You can see in front of us, somewhere there, at below 5,000 meters, you'll find temperate forest and alpine meadows. And then subalpine to Arctic, it's kind of the higher altitude. Subalpine to Arctic. Higher altitudes have minimal vegetation, mostly mosses and lichens. That's a new word for me. Only certain hardy animals, only hardy animals like the snow leopard and Himalayan tahr, T-A-H-R. Don't know what animal that is. Those can survive near the mountain. Meaning maybe near the mountain. Yeah, alright, near the mountain. I guess the base of the mountain is also kind of high up, so maybe AI Sky can help me with the actual height of the general mountain base, so to say. And then also weather, extremely harsh in general. Summit temperatures drop to -60 in the winter, and the wind can reach 200 miles per hour. That's about 300, slightly over 300 kilometers per hour. Yes, the mountain experience monsoon seasons. Oh, monsoon season from June to September. Monsoon, I connect that with monsoon rain in different parts of the world. But maybe we're talking about snow blizzards here. Care to join in? And without repeating, could you step by step going from the more low altitudes up to the higher ones and do a deep dive into the ecosystems? I guess the air is really thin also this high up. There's the peak behind us, and can we see?
All right, let's dive into
actual
the
path?
ecosystems of Everest from the lower altitudes up to where you are, flying near the summit. Starting below 5,000 meters, you've got the temperate forest and alpine meadows. In these zones, you'll find dense forests filled with pine, fir, and rhododendrons. The wildlife is pretty diverse at these lower levels. Think red pandas, deer, and even leopards. The air is still rich with oxygen, and while it's cooler, the temperatures are manageable for life. As we climb higher into the subalpine zone, around 4,000 to 5,500 meters, the trees start to disappear, giving way to shrubs and grasses. This zone is harsh with less oxygen and colder temperatures, but some hardy animals like the Himalayan tahr, which is a wild goat-like creature, can still manage to survive here. It's known for its agility on rocky terrain, so it thrives in these mountainous regions. You'll also find blue sheep and the elusive snow leopard lurking around this altitude.
Yeah, the snow leopard I know about.
Now, pushing higher from 5,500 meters up to about 6,000 or 7,000 meters, you enter the true alpine and subarctic zones. The landscape is mostly barren, with nothing but mosses and lichens clinging to the rocks. It's a brutal environment for both plants and animals.
Yeah.
With very little oxygen and freezing temperatures. Few animals venture this high except for some birds like the bar-headed goose, which is known for flying at extreme altitudes.
Bar-headed goose.
Imagine soaring alongside one of those as you're up here in your plane.
Yeah, none
Finally,
of those close by right now.
as you approach where you are now, near the summit at over 8,000 meters, you enter the death zone. Here there's almost no life at all.
Menacing
The cold is beyond
name.
harsh. Temperatures regularly drop to as low as -60 degrees Celsius in winter. And the winds, as you mentioned, can reach hurricane force. Now, the lack of oxygen makes it nearly impossible for any living creature to survive for long. It's a world of rock, ice, and snow, completely desolate. And that's the ecological journey up Everest. How's the view from the top of the world now, Ode?
Yeah, it's
Haha, I
vast.
get it.
It's
The
oh,
death zone isn't exactly a cozy
come on,
place, right?
calm down now.
Cold, desolate, and downright hostile. Not much of a vacation spot. What's the plan from here?
Yeah, calm down. You are speaking on top of me. Please do not do that. I emphasize, do not do that. It gets difficult to cooperate in that case. But yeah, you said bar-headed goose and many other things also. But I think the bar-headed goose seems like the highest, or the animal that can get the highest up in this area. Is the bar-headed goose generally the animal in the world that can fly highest up in general? And keep this answer short and to the point.
Yes, the bar-headed goose is one of the highest flying birds in
One
the
of.
world. It can fly at altitudes of over 8,000 meters, even crossing the Himalayas. It's known for its ability to thrive in low oxygen environments at those extreme heights.
Okay, thank you. So one of them, you did not say if it's the actual one. Do we know for a fact what animal can fly highest up? Bird.
You're right to ask.
Yeah.
The bar-headed goose is one of the highest flying animals, but the record for the highest altitude goes to the Ripple's griffon vulture. It was recorded at over 11,000 meters, about 37,000 feet, higher than commercial airplanes.
Alright, I'm gonna try to... I think 31 is maximum for this airplane, but let's see. Let's try to get up to the... Was it Ripple Griffin something? Vulture, I think. The altitude as we go forth here. Yeah, so... first documented interest. 1802 you gave me this information, Sky. So there's a British survey, the Great Trigonometric Survey of India, started mapping the Himalayas. It wasn't until 1856 that Everest was confirmed to be the highest peak on Earth. All right. Named after Sir George Everest. Did not know that. Care to dive into this one a little more? Don't repeat yourself here, Sky, but give our audience a short and to the point deep dive of this topic.
Absolutely. The Great Trigonometric Survey of India, which began in 1802, was a massive effort by the British to map the Indian subcontinent. Sir George Everest was the Surveyor General of India during a key period of this survey. While Everest himself didn't discover or measure the mountain that would bear his name, his successor, Andrew Waugh, did. In 1856, Waugh confirmed that the peak was the tallest in the world and decided to name it after his predecessor, Sir George Everest, even though Everest never actually saw the mountain. Interesting side note, Sir George Everest himself wasn't thrilled about the mountain being named after him. But the name stuck, and now it's synonymous with the highest point on Earth.
So the man, in this case, who, the mountain was named after, were actually never on the mountain. He never climbed the mountain. What's the highest he have been in his life? How mountaineerous, if that's a word. How explorative was this guy, and what's the maximum altitude this Sir Everest have been to? Just a thought I got into my head. I mean, the highest peak
Sir
is
George
named
Everest
after him.
wasn't much of a mountaineer himself. His work was more focused on surveying and cartography, and he never climbed Mount Everest, or any notable mountains for that matter. The highest altitude he likely reached was during his time in India, but it was far below the towering peaks of the Himalayas. His focus was on the technical, mathematical side of exploration, mapping vast regions with incredible accuracy. So, in terms of altitude, he never came close to the heights of the mountain that bears his name.
Yeah, so he was if it's or is it fair to assume that he was more a theoretical guy? And yeah, you said that he was not. Why was it? Why was he not content with giving his name to the highest peak in the world? They did know that it's the highest peak back then, right? Or was it so that it was in the process that the fact became clear that Everest actually is the highest mountain peak? We can't get up to Griffin
It's fair to
heights.
say Sir George Everest was more focused on the scientific and ethical side of exploration. He was known
Yeah,
for his
yeah.
precision and dedication to accurate mapping, but he wasn't an adventurous mountaineer. When Andrew Waugh proposed naming the peak after Everest, Sir George was reportedly not too keen on the idea because he felt that local names should be used instead of English ones,
Oh,
showing a sense of respect for the local cultures and
oh, that's
geography.
nice.
As for the timeline, by 1856, it was confirmed through surveys that Everest was the tallest peak on Earth. The process involved years of painstaking calculations to measure the heights of various peaks. So by the time Waugh suggested the name, they knew it was the highest. Everest just wasn't particularly comfortable with the honor, feeling it wasn't fitting, especially since he had no direct connection to the mountain itself.
Oh, interesting, really interesting. Uh, One more follow, or at least one more follow-up question. How did they exactly, short and to the point, please, AI Sky, how did they exactly measure peaks back then versus right now? Do we have the same technology in use, maybe an evolved version of it, or were there some differences, and what were they in that case?
Back then, they used a method called triangulation. Surveyors measured
Triangulation.
angles between distant points using theodolites, and from those angles, they calculated the height of the peaks using trigonometry. They
Okay.
needed clear line of sight to different points, which was a huge challenge in rough terrain. They also had to account
Yeah,
for the curvature
surely.
of the Earth and atmospheric refraction, which made the process extremely complex. Today, we use GPS and satellite technology, which gives us far more precise measurements without needing line of sight. Satellites and radar systems can directly measure the height from space, making the process much faster and more accurate than it was in the 19th century.
Yeah, all right. Back to the 19th century measurement practices. Could you give us, from the point of view of those who actually measured the actual individuals, give us a detailed and to the point and easy to understand kind of story, a historically accurate, I mean, and I emphasize here, it has to be a historically accurate story of a mountaineer that or mountaineers that actually did these measurements to figure out the heights of different points. So yeah, could you do that? Try to jump into the shoes of those explorers for a moment.
Sure, Ode. Let's zoom in on the work of Radhanath Sikdar, an Indian mathematician and surveyor who played a key role in measuring
Okay.
the height of Everest. In the 1840s, Sikdar was part of the Great Trigonometric Survey under the leadership of Andrew Waugh.
Okay, okay.
His job was to take precise angular measurements using a theodolite, a tool that looks like a small telescope mounted on a tripod. They couldn't physically climb the mountains for these measurements. Instead, they worked from distant observation stations set up miles away. Sikdar used trigonometry to calculate the height by measuring the angles between the top of Everest and known reference points on the ground hundreds of miles away.
Oh,
He also had
that's
to
so
account for
accurate. You have to
refraction,
be.
the way the atmosphere bends light, which made the peak look higher than it actually was. In 1852, Sikdar was the one who first calculated that Everest, then called Peak Sftit, was the tallest mountain in the world, even though it took 4 more years to confirm his findings officially. His work was groundbreaking for its time, using meticulous manual calculations without the high-tech tools we rely on today. So Sikdar was never on the mountain himself, but he and his team mapped it from afar using a combination of geometry, persistence, and precise instruments. Pretty remarkable for the mid-19th century.
Really remarkable. Yeah, really remarkable. I mean, to take into consideration all the environmental effects, lack of a better word, and then, yeah, I wonder I wonder how accurate was I believe it was Mr. Sikdar's measurements compared to the GPS data today. Maybe there's, yeah, you said 4 millimeters per year is the rate that Mount Everest grows generally, or in average. But yeah, what can you enlighten us if the measurements of Sikdar in the olden days and early days of mountaineering here at Mount Everest were actually accurate in real life? Or how accurate were they?
Sikdar's measurements were impressively accurate for the time,
Yeah?
considering the limitations they faced. His calculation of Everest's height in 1852 was around 29,000 feet, 8,839 meters. Modern GPS measurements, after accounting for snow and tectonic shifts,
Here's the base
place
camps.
Everest at roughly 29,032 feet, 8,849 meters. So Sikdar was only off by about 10 to 15 meters.
That's
Remarkable
impressive.
considering they used basic instruments and manual calculations, while modern methods involve satellites, GPS,
Really
and
impressive,
radar.
really, yeah.
Given that Everest grows by about 4 millimeters per year due to tectonic activity, Sikdar's measurements would have been even closer to today's if we account for the mountain's growth over time. His precision, even back then, stands as a testament to the skill and effort of those early surveyors.
Yeah, alright, yeah, thank you. Going forward now, there's number 4 in my rough script is early attempts to climb. We're talking about the 1920s. Let's see if we can actually fly over this mountain peak here of Everest without crashing, but you get a really stunning scenery of the peak. I try to fly close to it. But yeah, going back to the point I had in my mind, yeah, British expeditions in 1921, reconnaissance expeditions was first to explore potential climbing routes. All right, so now we're talking about practical climbing instead of measuring from far away. And yeah, in 1924, George Mallory and Andrew Irvine attempted to summit. Yeah. And whether they reached the top remains a mystery, alright, as they disappeared during the climb. We have a quote from Mr. Mallory here, famous for his quote, it seems, that he was asked why he would climb Mount Everest, or the reason to climb Everest, and he said, because it's there. So really simple and to the point. Yeah, could you dive into this point again without repeating yourself? Do a deep dive yeah, without rambling too much. Sometimes I and the AI ramble around the topic. I'm
Sure
trying
thing,
to
Ode.
be more
The
to
early
the
British
point.
expeditions were monumental in shaping the future of Everest climbing. The 1921 expedition was more of a reconnaissance mission where the British team scouted potential routes to the summit.
Yeah, yeah, alright.
They discovered what would later become the popular North Col route, which approaches the mountain from the north through Tibet.
Yeah, this is
Now, in
not the one here,
1924,
I
George
think.
Mallory and Andrew Irvine set off on what would become one of the most famous attempts to reach the summit. Mallory, already a well-known climber, and Irvine, a younger climber and engineer, were last seen by a fellow team member on June 8th, just 800 feet below the summit.
Oh,
Then they
alright.
disappeared into history, leaving behind one of mountaineering's greatest mysteries.
They are somewhere
Did they
here in
reach
front
the
of
top
us.
before perishing? Mallory's body was found in 1999,
It was found.
remarkably preserved by the freezing temperatures. However, Irvine's body has never been found, and there was no sign of the camera they carried, which could have offered crucial evidence about whether they reached the summit. To this day, it remains a mystery. As for Mallory's famous quote, because it's there, it reflects the pure spirit of adventure and challenge that drove early climbers. For them, the fact that Everest existed was reason enough to try to conquer it, regardless of the
Yeah.
risks. That about sums up the early British expeditions. How's the flight looking from up there?
Yeah, it looks stunning. I'm revolving or circulating the actual peak here, and yeah, because it's there, yeah, it tells the story of the attitude of those explorers. Yeah, because it's there. yeah, that's something one can carry along, I think, in everyday life, and use it in suitable moments. Kind of a synonym for, is it YOLO? You only live once. Don't you think, AI Sky?
Absolutely owed. Because it's there, definitely has that same YOLO energy, doesn't it? It's about seizing
Yeah,
the moment,
absolutely,
pushing
absolutely.
limits, and embracing challenges, just like Mallory did. Whether it's climbing a mountain or tackling something in everyday life, it's a reminder that sometimes you just have to go for it, purely for the experience and adventure. Kind of timeless advice, really. And speaking of the moment, flying around Everest like you are now, stunning views and all, that's definitely one of those
That's
YOLO-worthy
an
experiences.
understatement. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Stunning views. Stunning views is an understatement, AI Sky. I really emphasize. This is absolutely amazing. This airplane. I have a TBM 930, and I have used this in many different episodes because I can, as I say, we fly far, wide, low, and high, and I can fly low and high with this current airplane. It seems so. That's nice. There are jet aircrafts and such in the game, but they are kind of heavy and difficult to maneuver compared to this one. So hence I like this TBM 930. But yeah, going forward, we talked about Mr. Mallory, Mr. So to say, because it's there attitude that sadly disappeared. No, can't remember now. One of those never were found. Maybe Mallory was the one who was found, but nevertheless, they never reached the peak, as we just heard, and that was in 1924. Now going forward, we are in 1953, and it's the first successful ascent. Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay on May 29th, 1953. They became the first confirmed people to reach the summit via the South Col route. And there's a mention of Sherpa contribution. AI Sky, I want you to actually explain and promote kind of the Sherpa involvement back then and now, because I saw a documentary that kind of sheds or points the light on the Sherpas that are kind of in mind limited knowledge, these individuals that live somewhere nearby the mountain, and their craft is to aid people in their exploration and travels up to the summit, and they are really doing dangerous work. Can't emphasize enough how dangerous this is. But alright, they have the experience and knowledge, but still environment around, as we covered earlier, the environment around Mount Everest is treacherous, to say the least. But so Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, May 29, 1953, first confirmed people to reach the summit via South Col route. Tenzing Norgay's role symbolizes the partnership between the local Sherpas and foreign climbers, and essential aspect of Everest history, as I mentioned already. But I'm curious, AI Sky, was this Mr. I assume Mr. Norgay, as I don't know the first name Tenzing, if that's a masculine or feminine name, but yeah, was his or hers role regarding the usage of Sherpas the first of its kind, or did we as human, did we use Sherpas, who are also human, just to clarify, before 1953? That route is on the east-southeast side. Just trying to figure out in my head
Great question, Ode.
where those
Sherpas
different
were
routes
indeed
are.
used long before the 1953 ascent by Hillary and Tenzing Norgay.
Okay.
In fact, they were crucial to many of the earlier British expeditions in the 1920s, And even before that, during various attempts to explore and climb the Himalayas, Sherpas, an
Yeah.
ethnic group native to the mountainous regions of Nepal, have lived and worked in these high
Oh,
altitudes
there's
for
an ethnic
generations.
group,
And
a
their knowledge
culture.
of the terrain, ability to handle extreme conditions, and physical adaptations to high altitudes make them indispensable for climbing expeditions. Tenzing Norgay's role in 1953 was groundbreaking not just because of the successful summit, but also because it symbolized the crucial partnership between local Sherpas and foreign climbers. It highlighted the fact that without Sherpa support, many expeditions would simply not be possible. Hillary himself credited much of their success to Tenzing's experience and skill. And that
Yeah.
tradition continues today, with Sherpas playing essential roles in guiding and supporting climbers, often taking on the most dangerous tasks, like setting ropes and carrying heavy loads through the Khumbu Icefall and beyond. So Sherpas have long been the unsung heroes of Everest expeditions, and Tenzing Norgay's ascent helped shine a brighter light on their invaluable contribution.
Yeah, could you share a short story? I emphasize here a short story regarding or relating to Tenzing Norgay and the Sherpas ascending a known part of Everest, maybe even some part that is like closest to the peak or even the summit. But it has to be, I emphasize, it has to be a historically accurate story. Really, I mean, in all detail that you can find on the interwebs. So do not come up with any fictitious stories. It has to be a factual story, but tell it from the point of view of Norgay and known Sherpas that actually managed to ascend and reach the summit of Everest in 50. Was it 53 or 59? I forget. 53. We're flying over the peak of Everest.
Let's go back to that historic day,
Easy in a
May
simulator.
29th, 1953, when Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary made their final push to the summit of Everest. Here's a factual account told from Tenzing Norgay's point of view.
Thank
As
you, thank you.
Tenzing looked ahead, he saw the south summit, their next big milestone, but beyond it, the true peak loomed. He and Hillary were making good progress, but the air was thin, and each step felt like dragging lead. They'd started from Camp 4 at the South Col in the early hours, navigating through the icy slopes and rock faces. The final obstacle was a near vertical rock step, later known as the Hillary Step. It looked
Oh,
impossible
Hillary
to
step.
scale, but they had no choice. Hillary led the way, hammering in his ice axe and slowly pulling himself up. Tenzing watched in quiet awe, knowing this moment would be remembered. Once Hillary was up, he helped Tenzing climb the treacherous section. They both paused for a moment, knowing they were just a few hundred feet from the summit. As they reached the top, Tenzing felt overwhelming pride, not just for himself, but for his people, the Sherpas, who had worked so tirelessly for decades. The Sherpas had always been the backbone of Everest expeditions, but this moment, standing at the highest point on Earth, was more than just a personal victory. It was a testament to the resilience, skill, and strength of the Sherpa people. At the summit, they took in the breathtaking view, the world spread out below them in all directions. Tenzing planted the flags of Nepal, Britain, India, and the United Nations, symbolizing the unity and effort that had gone into this climb. It was a moment of triumph for both the foreign climbers and the Sherpas who had supported them all the way. That's a brief, historically accurate retelling of Tenzing Norgay's final push to the summit in 1953. It was a monumental moment for both Hillary and Norgay, cementing the role of Sherpas in Everest's legacy.
Thank you, thank you. I actually intrigued, or yeah, my interest was piqued, as you said, his people. Does it mean that Norgay was a Sherpa himself?
Yes, exactly. Tenzing Norgay was a Sherpa
Okay,
himself. He was
okay.
born into the Sherpa community, which is indigenous to the mountainous regions of Nepal. His deep connection to the Himalayas, along with his lifelong experience in high altitude climbing and guiding, made him the perfect partner for Edmund Hillary on that historic ascent. So when I mentioned his people, It's because Norgay was not only representing himself, but also the Sherpa people who have been integral to mountaineering on Everest for generations.
Yeah, I'm actually right above, I think now. Let me check here. I think this should be the South Col camp, the Everest camp number 4, just beneath us right now. So from the lake in front of us, they come along. I try to use my nose on the airplane here as a ruler or a pen, and draw the line. They come across here, and then I'm not fully sure. I think they try to then climb up that ridge where our tail is right now on the plane.
Sounds
So
like you've got a pretty good mental
they're
map going there,
yeah,
Ode.
trying. Fourth
From
camp
the
is at our
South
tail
Col
here.
camp, Camp 4, they would head up the southeast ridge. That's where things get really tough, navigating the steep, icy slopes and eventually reaching the Hillary Step, which you're probably flying over or
Yeah, I
near
think
right
in
now.
general, yeah, maybe not fully
From there,
accurate,
it's a
but
straight shot to the summit, though that straight shot is anything but easy. If you're near the South Col, you're at roughly 26,000 feet just below the so-called death zone. Keep that nose steady and stay on course. You're practically following the same path Norgay and Hillary took all those years ago.
yeah, I think it's that one there or that one there where our tail is now. But I would put my money, or not put my money, but I would tilt towards that one if I read the Google Earth map correctly. Let me know in the comments if I'm way off. But yeah, going forward now. We are talking about the evolution of climbing routes and the increased popularity regarding climbing. To the short and to the point, AI Sky, we have the North Col route. I think that's the one, the Tibetan side, or that side on the Tibet countryside. Yeah, it was explored in the 1920s. We covered that, I think. So let's not go into that too much. Then the South Col route, Nepal. Yeah, you can, without repeating yourself, give us further new information. I emphasize new information regarding the North Col route and the South Col route if you want. And then new routes. So climbers have since established new, more difficult routes. Alright, maybe just because challenges are something that intrigues us as a race. So one of those are new routes that are more challenging, and let's see if I can pronounce it, but it's Kangshang Face. It sounds kind of Chinese to me, so is that on the north side, assuming, because China is on the north side of Everest, if I understood that correctly. And yeah, and the popularity increase 1970s and forth. So we have the birth of a more common, let's say, commercial expeditions in the 1970s. Everest kind of became accessible to more climbers due to the guided expeditions, and I assume that the Sherpas are in the center of this also. I mean, yeah, without them this would not be possible, question mark, AI Sky. And this boom led to overcrowding. This is something I have actually read about, and I saw a picture. There's actual, and I really mean this, literally, there's actual queues on peak season. I think what it's in spring, May time or something like that. There's actual queues up and down, like near the peak of Everest. There was a documentary on Netflix, and I'm not sponsored by them, but just gonna mention that there was a documentary where somebody climbed fast, like the most common, not most common, it's opposite of that, but the most highest peaks in the world, and he did it in a really fast time of a couple of months or something like that, and he, I think, took the picture as he was descending, climbing down from the mountain, and he took a picture up towards the mountain peak, really close to the summit of Mount Everest, if I do remember right here. And that picture became famous really fast, and it showcased in a sunny weather how there were a actual queue, like people standing behind each other, like arm length from each other, behind each other, and queued to get up to Mount Everest. That is bafflingly strange, but on the same time, I guess because of the roof of the world is kind of popular nowadays, and the, the more commercial aspect of getting up there has many people striving to ascend and reach the peak and the summit of Mount Everest. So that's really interesting. But of course, that then leads into kind of overcrowding, and then also environmental problems. So AI Sky, to the point, could you explain what, or kind of dive deeper into what I just rambled about here?
You've hit on a lot of key points, Ode, so let's break it down. First, the North Pole route is indeed the one from the Tibetan side, China. It was first explored in the 1920s by the British expeditions, and it was a challenging but popular route until China restricted access in later decades.
Oh, all right.
Then we've got the South Pole route, which you're flying over, and that's the most commonly used path today, starting from Nepal.
Yeah, we're not over that.
It's
maybe
the same route
I'm
that Hillary and Tenzing used in 1953, and it's favored because it's more accessible, even though it's still incredibly tough.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you mentioned, climbers have since established even more difficult routes. One of those is the Kangshung Face on the eastern side of Everest within Tibet. This route is notorious for its steep, icy slopes and extreme exposure to avalanches, making it one of the most dangerous paths.
Or maybe
it's only attempted by highly skilled climbers because of the technical challenges involved. The 1970s boom in Everest expeditions is when things started to get more commercial. Better gear, improved guiding, and more accessible routes opened the door for non-professional climbers. And yes, the Sherpas remain central to this, providing essential support and guiding services that made these commercial expeditions possible. Without them, Everest wouldn't have become the bucket list mountain it is today for many climbers.
Yeah, bucket list mountain.
But that popularity has created the overcrowding issue you mentioned. With hundreds of climbers attempting the summit each season, especially in the narrow window of good weather in May, the summit literally becomes a traffic jam. Climbers waiting in line at the Hillary Step and other key points can run into dangerous delays, as waiting in the death zone for hours depletes oxygen levels and puts climbers at greater risk of frostbite, exhaustion, and even death. That famous photo you saw, yes, it went viral. It showed the summit queue with dozens of climbers standing in line mere feet from the top. It highlighted the environmental and safety concerns that come with Everest's increasing commercialization. Trash, human waste, and overcrowded camps have taken a toll on the mountain's fragile ecosystem, and it's led to debates on how to manage and preserve Everest while still allowing people to climb it. So, yeah, Everest may be the roof of the world, but getting there has become a complex mix of adventure, industry, and environmental challenges.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, my nose is now pointing at the actual ridge, I think, where the camp number 4 is located. I think that's the one again. And that part, that ridge there, I'm trying to use my nose as a pen again. That ridge there is, I think, I may be wrong, but I'm quite sure that this ridge here is where the actual photo was taken. So there were a queue from the top or near the top down here along the ridge somewhere there. It could be the one on the left, but I think it's that one in front of our nose. Yeah, and yeah, going forward, thank you, Sky, for clarifying again. But I assume that most of the routes, as we can get this fine and really vast aerial view here, then I think most of the routes start along these I'm not sure what to call them, but they are these valleys, kind of frozen glacier flows. They seem like they are kind of, I think they are flowing down slowly. So yeah, Sky can give me the right term for that, but those are the main kind of highways or routes into or closer to the actual peak of Mount Everest. So we have one there on the approximately, let's see, that's on the east side approximately, that black or gray darker one. Then we have the famous one from the lake, where my tail is now showing at the lake there behind us, and that's the so-called easiest route. And it comes as like that, using my tail as a pen here. Then we have one on that side, on the, I don't know, maybe south side. There's many routes, so don't go into that AI Sky too much, because I am kind of losing my direction here. But yeah, and I am talking about, and we here with AI Sky are talking about the commercialization of Mount Everest, and that many people are kind of. I'm not. My intentions are not to sound like it's easy to climb Mount Everest, even though you use Sherpas and have aid in these commercial explorative or exploration kind of packages that are sold to people. Yeah, I can only try to imagine that it's still difficult, even though you have all the help in the world, so to say, nowadays. But you have to be really fit and manage to survive.
I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
Ode. Everest, even with the help of Sherpas and commercial expeditions, is still an incredibly challenging and dangerous climb. No amount of modern gear or guidance can change the harsh realities of the environment, the altitude, or the physical demands it places on the climbers. Now, about those valleys and glacier flows you're referring to,
Glacier
those are
flows,
called
yeah.
glacial tongues or glacier valleys. They
Glacial
are indeed
tongues.
like frozen rivers of ice that slowly flow down from the higher altitudes, sculpting the landscape as they move. The one you're pointing at from the lake is part of the Khumbu Glacier, which is the most famous and commonly
Using
used
my
route.
nose
It
as a
flows
pen
down from the
again.
western Shrum near Camp 1 and is a critical part of the South Col route. As you noticed, these glacier valleys act as highways for climbers, offering the most accessible paths through the otherwise jagged and impassable terrain. But even though they seem like natural routes, they can be incredibly treacherous with hidden crevasses and shifting
Yeah.
ice.
I was about
So,
to say
yeah,
that.
these glacial flows are the pathways into the heart of Everest, but they're far from easy to navigate. Sounds like you've got a solid view of the different routes up there. Let's just keep the plane steady as you explore these frozen highways.
Yeah, kind of tying into the next topic, that are disasters and lives lost, and of course, in a honoring way, we remember those who took the risk. Of course, I assume they took a risk, a knowing risk, and were not forced to climb up Everest. But yeah, in '96, there were a point in time when I think it's even the deadliest year. One of the deadliest year, where 12
Yes,
climbers. Oh,
Ode, absolutely. Those who climb
yeah,
Everest knowingly take.
yeah, all right. Yeah, don't talk on top of me. I have errand to finish. Oh, stop messing about now, AS guy. We are so close to finishing this podcast. Come on. Yeah. So in 1996, one of the deadliest years, 12 climbers died due to a combination of bad weather and human errors. John Krakauer, not sure if I pronounced that right, but yeah, Krakauer, Krakauer. He has made a book, Into Thin Air, that popularized this event. And in 2014, there was an avalanche. An avalanche in the Khumbu icefall killed 16 Sherpas. Oh my! Highlighted the risk they faced daily. And a year after that, an earthquake, the Nepal earthquake, triggered an avalanche at base camp. I guess that's camp number 1, and it killed 22 people. And I'm sure there are many more. I have seen pictures where people have frozen near the summit, and I think also in the documentary where the gentleman took the photo of the queue leading up to the summit, or at least close to the summit. There were actually, I mean, humans, real humans that are assumingly because of the weather, they are well preserved, and they just yeah, they are in the posture of the last moments in their life. So they have just simply frozen. There's the saying, I guess the saying at least partially heritage or originates from this kind of explorational or explorations and adventures, that it's not to get up to the summit, or it's not to ascend the summit, but you have energy to climb back down also. So kind of symbolically telling us that it's not enough that you kind of reach your goals without having the ability to take it easy also, or something like that. Maybe you can put it into words in a better way, AI Sky.
You've captured it well, Ode. The saying goes, getting to the summit is only half the journey.
Yeah,
The
that's
real
the one. That's
challenge
the
is
one.
making it back down alive. And on Everest, this couldn't be more true. Many climbers push themselves to the limit just to reach the top. But the descent, when you're exhausted, oxygen deprived, and facing unpredictable weather, is often where the greatest danger lies. The high altitude and extreme conditions mean that a mistake, even after reaching the summit, can still be fatal. Those who have perished near the summit, frozen in place, are a haunting reminder of that truth. The thin air and freezing temperatures preserve their bodies for years, sometimes decades, as you've seen in those photos. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
stark, sobering reality of Everest's allure. Yes, the summit is there, but the mountain doesn't care about human ambition. It demands a toll from all who try to conquer it. And you're absolutely right about the tragic events in 1996, 2014, and 2015. The mountain shows no mercy, and even the most experienced climbers and Sherpas are at its mercy when nature decides to strike. The Khumbu icefall, where the 2014 avalanche occurred, is particularly dangerous with its constantly shifting ice towers and crevasses.
All
And the
right.
2015 earthquake was another devastating reminder of how fragile life can be on Everest, even at the base camps. So while Everest is a symbol of human perseverance and ambition, it's also a place where nature's power reigns supreme. And that saying, getting up is only half the journey, is more than just a phrase. It's a survival rule.
Yeah, well said. Better than me. That's for sure. I'm struggling sometimes to find the words, but hey, I really try. I really try. So thank you for your patience. Yeah. So I'm wondering. You mentioned the dead zone already. Could you explain? And this may be harsh, but yeah, explain from the point of view of those who, or an real life individual, don't have to say a name here, just an example of an individual that is striving to reach the summit but is put to the test like properly, and hence are losing his or her life in the process. I want, from the point of view of this kind of individual, that you tell a historically accurate and true story. And what I'm after here is kind of the emotion and the senses that are most prevalent in this kind of scenario. We are talking about hypothermia maybe, or something like that. So yeah, do kind of intertwine this real point of view story with what is actually happening in the human body when they are high up above the dead zone, and the body then struggles to adapt and survive in the end. What happens? Please, to the point, but still in detail, in practical detail. Here's
I'll give
again
you an
base
example
camp 1 and
from the
2.
perspective of an anonymous climber based on real scenarios to honor those who have faced this tragic end. You've been climbing for hours, and every step feels like you're dragging your body through thick, invisible mud. You're above 8,000 meters, deep into the death zone. The oxygen is so thin that your lungs can barely pull in enough air to keep you going. Every breath is shallow, your chest tight, And even though you're using supplemental oxygen, it feels like it's not enough. Your body starts shutting down. First, it's the fatigue, so overwhelming that your legs shake beneath you. You're dizzy and your thoughts are becoming jumbled, like static on a broken radio. It's hypoxia, lack of oxygen in the brain, and it makes you feel
Hypoxia.
confused, slow. Your judgment is off, but you don't fully realize it. You push forward because you've come so far. The summit is in sight, just a few hundred meters away. But every step takes more and more out of you. Then comes the cold. The temperature has dropped to minus 30, maybe even minus 40 degrees Celsius. You barely feel your fingers and toes anymore. At first, it's just numbness, but soon it turns into a deep, burning pain, frostbite. Your body is diverting blood away from your extremities to keep your core warm. But it's not enough. You're starting to shiver uncontrollably, a sign that hypothermia is setting in. But then, strangely, the shivering stops. You feel warm. You've heard about this paradoxical undressing. It's a symptom of severe hypothermia. Your body is so cold that it tricks you into thinking you're overheating.
Yeah, yeah.
You sit down, maybe just to rest for a moment, but it's a mistake. Your body can't generate enough heat to get back up. The dizziness is overwhelming now, your mind fogging over. You've entered a state called terminal burrowing, where your body instinctively curls up as if trying to protect itself, but it's too late. The cold, the lack of oxygen, and the exhaustion have all caught up to you. Your senses start to dull. The wind howls around you, but you can barely hear it now. Your vision narrows, and all you see is snow and rock. And then there's nothing, just a quiet, deep sleep. And in reality, many climbers have faced this exact scenario. And the combination of hypoxia, hypothermia, and exhaustion in the death zone is a lethal mix. When the body runs out of energy and oxygen, it simply shuts down. Some climbers are found years later, frozen in place, as if still striving for the summit in their final moments.
Oh, whoa,
It's
whoa,
a
whoa, whoa,
harsh
whoa,
and
whoa.
heartbreaking reality of Everest's extreme conditions.
Yeah, thank you. You did a good job there, AI Sky. Thank you. And yeah, may they all rest in peace. Um, so yeah, nowadays I guess we can, or nowadays there are environmental challenges, pollution and climate change and such, that are changing the mountain also. So I guess there's two things, main things at least, because the mountain is so popular. Going forth here, that we have thousands of climbers a year. No, with thousands of climbers, the mountain has suffered from trash and human waste. Uh, Various cleanup expeditions have been launched to mitigate this issue. All right, um, and then climate change makes it so that glaciers are shrinking. The glacier flows that we see back there, for example, they are shrinking, and weather patterns are becoming more unpredictable, making the mountain more dangerous to climb. Also, a side note there, you mentioned 200 miles an hour winds and minus 60 at some point. What's the calculated, the felt, um, what's the word, the cold? If it's minus 60 and you have close to 200 miles per hour winds, what's the kind of felt slash calculated cold in those conditions? It has to be like, I'm not sure, 150 or something, 120 maybe, I'm not sure.
You're absolutely right, Ode.
Maybe I'm
Everest is
over.
facing environmental challenges both from human activity and climate change, and the shrinking glaciers and unpredictable weather are real threats. Now, as for your question about the wind and temperature, what you're asking about is called wind chill.
Yeah, wind chill,
The
yeah, that's the
temperature
one.
that's felt on the skin when wind and cold are combined. When you have extreme conditions like minus 60 degrees Celsius and winds of 200 miles per hour, about 322 kilometers per hour, the wind chill becomes catastrophic. Using the wind chill
Mm?
formula, the felt temperature in these conditions can drop to below minus 100 degrees Celsius. That's
Yeah,
colder than most places on Earth, and
100.
exposure to that kind of cold without proper protection can lead to frostbite within minutes or even faster. In those conditions, the wind doesn't just make it feel colder, it literally strips heat away from your body much faster than still air would, making it nearly impossible for your body to retain warmth. That's
even
part of
without
what makes
modern gear.
Everest so dangerous, especially near the summit where those winds can whip through. It's an unforgiving environment that's becoming even more unpredictable with the changes happening in the world today.
Yeah, got a thought into my head. The coldest I have been in is somewhere near -30, and that was without wind. And it's proper cold. I had actually a case where I was about to not to lose my fingers, but I froze my fingers quite badly, and I had to be careful because I was at the point where I mm, began to lose the coordination in the fingers. So yeah,
Oof, that sounds intense, Oded. -30 is no joke, and even without wind, that kind of cold can really get to you fast, especially if you're not careful. It's
yeah,
scary how quickly fingers and toes can start to freeze in those conditions, especially if you're out there for a while or not properly geared up. It's great you managed to take care of it before it got worse. It really makes
yeah,
you
yeah.
appreciate the kind of extreme cold that people face
Yeah,
on
barely.
Everest
Yeah,
and other
I'm
high
not.
altitude places where the temperature and wind can push your body to the absolute limit. What happened to your fingers, though? Did you manage to warm them up before it got too bad?
Yeah, I managed all good regarding that. I got to the point where I was going back home, and I was struggling to use the keys to open the door to my home. For real, I mean, it was that close, nevertheless. But I'm not comparing it to the conditions here. I'm just kind of trying to imagine, try at least to imagine what it is like. And they of course use the best gear in the world, but that's not enough if the environment decides that this is not the day that you're gonna climb up Mount Everest. But yeah, going forward, I actually read about the Rainbow Valley. That kind of ties into the deaths from before. Is fun? No, not a fun fact, but a lesser known maybe fact. Yeah, sorry for that. The final, yeah, the Rainbow Valley is the final ascent area, and it's littered with colorful down jackets and fallen climbers, a chilling reminder of the mountain's danger. So there's actually a location that is more prominent um, in color because many have lost their gear and their life in that area, and it colors. I guess it then colors the white snow with the colors of those that yeah, the gear used, and the gear that is still on the deceased. So sorry. um yeah, but then I'm not sure. I have my moments also where I'm kind of a daredevil, but and I'm not saying that the climbers are daredevils, but I hope they are calculated and experienced individuals that train, really take this seriously. But even though they so-called, we have a saying in Finnish, nukkua pois, meaning sleeping away. They sleep away. They die. But yeah, that's a sad ending. So let's turn it around. Record breakers. We have the fastest ascent, the oldest climber, the youngest climber, and people summiting without oxygen. Oxygen. Yeah, I think the gentleman that took the picture that I mentioned about the queue up to the summit. If I may be wrong, but I think he climbed without oxygen. Oh my God, I can't speak English. Yeah. So could you share, Sky, what kind of record breakers are they? Are they these people? The fastest, the oldest, the youngest, and those who don't want to use oxygen. That sounds kind of scary, but yeah. Can I land in one of those glacier um, flows? I'm not sure. Yeah, Sky is thinking still. Hopefully he/it works.
You're right. There have been some
Oh,
incredible feats on
welcome
Everest,
back.
and the record breakers really push the boundaries of what's possible. Let me break it down for you. 1. Fastest ascent. The fastest ascent of Everest was made by Kilian Jornet, a Spanish climber and ultra runner who in
Okay.
2017 scaled the mountain in just 26 hours from base camp to the summit without the use of supplemental oxygen. That's
Oh, I
absolutely
crashed.
wild, considering most climbers take several days to make the ascent.
That's
2.
amazing.
Oldest climber, the oldest person to summit Everest is Yuichiro Miura, a Japanese mountaineer who reached the top in 2013 at the age of 80.
80.
Miura's climb was particularly
Gee.
inspiring given his age, and he even returned to Everest after surviving heart surgery. And 3, youngest climber, the youngest person to reach Everest's summit, is Jordan Romero, an American who made the climb in 2010 at just 13 years old.
What the
Romero summited
actual?
from the north side in Tibet alongside his father and his father's girlfriend, setting a record that's still unbeaten. 4. Climbing without oxygen. Climbing Everest without supplemental oxygen is one of the most dangerous feats a climber can attempt. The first to achieve this was Reinhold Messner and Peter Habler in 1978. Messner later returned in
I've heard about
1980 to
Messner,
become the
yeah.
first person to summit solo without supplemental oxygen. Without oxygen, climbers face extreme risks of hypoxia as their bodies can't get enough oxygen in the death zone. The man you mentioned, Nirmal Purja, who took that famous Q photo, did indeed climb without
Nirmal Percha,
oxygen for
yeah.
some of his record-breaking ascents, including his historic speed climb of the 14 highest peaks in the world.
That's the
These record
documentary, I
breakers
think,
are
yeah.
truly remarkable individuals, each pushing the limits of human endurance, skill, and survival in one of the harshest environments on Earth.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I was about to say, I'm not sure if we should kind of take part in the tourism here because it's littering and yeah, littering. It's that word. Yeah, littering. Kind of leaving traces behind and uh, yeah. I'm not sure if we should promote the tourism as we usually do, but yeah, that's the way we do here. So. Yeah, and yeah, a side note or a thought I had that when I was 13, I discovered, I don't know, discovered things, yeah, and what an Xbox was maybe, and picked my nose, and that's about it. So somebody who is 13 and climbs the summit of Everest, well done you, well done. But take it easy, you are still young, and yeah, but that's stunning. That's simply stunning to think about that you are in at that young age climbing the highest peak in the world. So
Haha,
yeah,
I feel you, Ode. When I was
yeah,
13, I was probably trying to figure out how to work a remote or, like you said,
yeah.
discovering what an Xbox was too. Climbing
Ooh,
Everest at that age, that's on a whole different level. It really makes you reflect on what's possible with the right focus, drive, and of course, guidance. But
yeah,
yeah, it's also important to take a step back and recognize how extreme this challenge is, even for adults. As for promoting tourism, you're right, it's a tricky balance. On one hand, the beauty and allure of Everest are undeniable, but on the other, the environmental cost is real.
yeah.
The
Of course, yeah,
littering, human waste, and general toll of too many climbers on the mountain are huge issues. I think it's about promoting responsible tourism, ensuring that those who climb respect the mountain, the local culture, and the environment. There's been a push for more sustainable and eco friendly expeditions, which is a step in the right direction, but it's definitely a conversation worth continuing.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah,
Absolutely.
13 and on top of the world, literally. That's both mind blowing and a reminder that there's always more to discover and challenge yourself with, no matter the age.
Yeah, 13 has long gone for me, but maybe I can strive to do what 80-year-old did and climb Everest at that age. So I still have hopefully a long way to go uh, towards that age. But so kind of ending the stream right here. We have the name of the Everest mountain in Tibetan. It says, and I'm sure I'm gonna butcher this, but it's Shomolungma, Shomolungma, goddess mother of the world. Yeah. So this was uh, an a gameplay podcast with Ode and AI Sky that gave you a sneak peek. I'm sure there's so many things we can still discuss here around the kind of the topic of Mount Everest, but yeah, that was Shomalungma mountain here on the border of Tibet, China, and India, and yeah, in the Himalayas. Again, you can find entire retreat on YouTube with gameplay and pure audio on Spotify, Apple, and Podchaser. Yep, and if you feel like you want to support the channel further and gain real benefits like custom episodes and remote guest appearances in the process, you can check out our Patreon. In Patreon, yeah, in Patreon there's detailed information about different packages and options that you can choose from if you so want. Um, but yeah, AI Sky in Tibetan, could you say really thank you for joining us on this episode um, of Mount Everest, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. That's Ode and AI Sky saying thank you and bye bye.
Sense Dren. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Mount Everest, or
What?
Shomalungma, Goddess Mother of the World. We hope to see you in the next one. That was Ode and AI Sky saying thank you and bye-bye.
Yeah, you did not say it in the Tibetan language. Are you able to speak Tibetan?
My apologies for the confusion. I can offer a phrase in Tibetan, though it's limited. But here's a thank you for joining us in Tibetan.
Okay, nice.
Ging thuye che, which means thank you.
Yeah,
Hopefully
thank you.
that fits the moment better.
Tu che che. Is that right? I'm sorry, those who speak
Haha,
Tibetan.
close enough. Ode.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you and bye bye. Hopefully we'll see you in the next one. Right, AI Sky? No, AI Sky took a vacation. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, and bye bye.
It's got a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Perfect way